Well, good morning. Good morning. Thank you to the whole Andrews community for this invitation, and especially to Jose, Jodelle, Rodney, and Sharon for their help in facilitating this visit. What a great way to spend some time together mid-semester right after your break, going on vocation. Jose failed to mention the coolest part of my bio, which is that I host a podcast called Callings, and I would like to invite all of you here, especially students, to add that to your podcast feed, because we interview people about their purpose and journey in their own vocational lives. And the coolest person probably that you would know I most recently interviewed is Rainn Wilson from The Office, who played Dwight Schrute on The Office. And we recently interviewed him. So please go ahead and download the app for Callings. I don't know that Jose knew that about me, so it's not his fault. The other thing I'm gonna ask you to indulge me with is a selfie, because my students would not believe this captive audience that I have here. So can we do like an Andrews wave or something? And then like, I'm gonna be in it, like, hello, can you wave at me? Thank you, that's really great. I go back with a lot of street credit all the way to Dubuque, Iowa on the Mississippi River. In my opinion, you have at Andrews University one of the best titles for a vocation program, going on vocation, that I have ever heard. I do want to point out for students who are not, who don't know about the program, that you actually have a great message of vocation right over here, and it says everyone is called. And so that is really what we're talking about when we talk about going on vocation, is your calling. As I reflected on what it means to go on vocation, I couldn't help but think about traveling. I thought about the study away trips I've gone on with students to Ireland, England, Italy, and to the years I spent in the United Kingdom at the Universities of Nottingham and Cambridge as an undergraduate and graduate student studying British literature, going to the theater, and drinking a lot of tea on rainy days like this one. I also thought about the regular traveling I do to our family's cabin in northern Wisconsin, where I kayak and swim and fish. I thought about more recent adventures with my teenage sons hiking all 5 of Utah's national parks. But going on vocation requires a different sort of travel, right? I mean, it might ask you to leave home, go someplace different, learn a new language, appreciate new cultures, challenge your beliefs, that in the same way that regular traveling does. However, it requires a different sort of skill set that involves traveling inside of oneself while paying attention to the noise and splendor and the cries of the world around you. This is a harder sort of traveling, but potentially more rewarding. Going on vocation is to explore the landscape of your inner callings and desires. It involves listening to those calling you to use your talents and gifts for not only your own purpose and delight, but to help others flourish as well. So I'm going to spend a little time traveling through the ways we can think about vocation, and then in my remaining remarks, I'd like to offer a few travel lessons today for your future pathways. I realize this is a risky thing to do with a group of Andrews students and faculty and staff who are called to be world changers. I saw that on your sign. It's all over the place, right? World changers every day, but I will try. Being a world changer involves traveling with wisdom and grace, so I hope that perhaps something I offer can aid you in that work. First, a word about the way vocation is a journey. Involves exploration, invites introspection. The journey is full of crossroads and divergent pathways. The journey is better, however, when we have the right disposition. It's about the habits we cultivate. So part of the habit of living a life of meaning and purpose, and that is what we're talking about when we talk about vocation, living a life of meaning and purpose, listening to what we are called to do in the world, is to consider what Margaret Mormon describes as the correct fit. And if you were students in my class, I would ask you to write this down. So if you want to write it down, you can, or you can just listen. The correct fit, what Mormon describes, is the inner fit and the outer fit of our vocations. The inner fit involves assessing what we are good at, what brings us deep joy, our unique qualities. Outer fit involves two things. First, the actual job or work we are seeking. And do we have all the information about it correct so that we can see it matches with our talents and strengths? For example, I love art. I would love to work in the art world. But in my assessment of my inner and outer fit, I realized I am a terrible artist. Not any good at it. I'm not a good artist at all. I love art, but I'm no good at it. But I'm potentially good at the display and study of art and working with people. And so maybe a good fit would be an internship at an art gallery or a museum. I would encourage students, all of you, to assess your inner fits and the outer world of the work you will do. The second part of the outer fit, as Mormon explains, is to listen to the pleas of others. This means we need to use our vocations, our callings, to respond to our neighbors. That part of outer fit is harder, but also is what gives meaning and purpose to our lives. Vocation involves listening to the multiple callings around us, from civic society, from our families, our peers, our neighbors, our workplace, faith communities, and strangers we might never meet. Discerning vocation means we are listening and then responding to those callings. Part of this response involves shedding the idea of a well-planned life for a more well-considered, responsive life. Now, this doesn't mean you ought not plan. Many good vocations and vacations result from excellent planning. But you should think about what political writer David Brooks calls the summoned life. Theologian Jason Mon, in his book, Neighbor Love Through Fearful Days, Finding Meaning and Purpose in a Time of Crisis, characterizes Brooks' idea this way: a summoned life looks to the situation and web of relationships in which it finds itself, asking how to respond. It is open to the pleas, gifts, needs, interruptions, and summons of others. It is not aimless, endlessly drifting, or thrown about by circumstance. It too is a life of reflection, intention, and responsibility. Open to the pleas, gifts, needs, interruptions, and summons of others. It is not aimless. Going on vocation means that we walk forward with openness to the web of relationships with neighbors and strangers and position ourselves as ready to respond. Theologian Paul Waddell, in a recent article in the Christian Scholars Review, writes that all callings, those that stretch across an entire lifetime, as well as those that summon us only momentarily, are opportunities to come to life through the giving and receiving of love. The vocation to love is a call that we can answer every day wherever we are. Vocation is a call to love, to give and receive love, a daily calling wherever we are in the world, whatever travels we are on. So as all of us world changers are packing our bags to go on vocation, tucking in reminders about living a summoned, well-considered life, and thinking about what a call to love looks like and asks of us, I would suggest we turn to an important piece of vocational equipment, the map. If all of you were in my class, I would give you all giant Post-it notes and markers and ask you to draw this, but I'm just going to describe it for you. When I first was invited to do this, I was invited to draw out all of the mentors that had influenced me, key experiences, highlights and failures, pains and joys that shaped the contour of my vocation. I'm an English professor who studies the long, beautiful novels of the 19th century, and therefore I prefer words to visuals. Yet the drawing of this map allowed me to see so many things, including the key crossroads and decision points of my journey. It showed me how my vocation was so informed by the communities that surrounded me. I say to everyone here, draw your own map and study the maps offered to you by others, your parents, mentors, coaches, spiritual leaders, historical figures, community members. Study the maps of your local environments, the ecologies that made you, including neighborhoods, ecosystems, climates, and landscapes. Then draw your own map of vocation. You will become adept at reading, intuiting, and navigating the vocational crossroads the more you study your map and those of others. This is not available on Google or GPS. This is only available for the habits cultivated in reflection. I've recently completed a book with a group of scholars entitled Called Beyond Ourselves, Vocation and the Common Good. And I have spent a great deal of time thinking about what it means to travel vocationally, so to speak, into the commons. What does it mean to live in and towards the common good? This leads me to my next piece of traveling advice, which is to get your hands dirty in the work of the world. As we explore vocation, we have to live in the world, vulnerable to the storms as well as the sunshine. As theologian and civic engagement scholar Darby Ray reminds us, the overlap between community engagement and vocation reveals that world is not merely a convenient backdrop for one's personal odyssey, but when we engage its exquisite beauty, heartbreaking suffering, and mind-boggling complexity, we often find ourselves desiring not just our own flourishing, but that of the whole world. Getting our hands dirty can happen in a lot of ways as we travel. We can work alongside others in our neighborhoods by feeding the hungry, tending the sick, reaching out to the lonely. This kind of vocational journey within the Christian tradition is modeled by the Jesuits' example of accompaniment, or walking alongside our neighbors, not ahead of or from afar. The Protestant reformer Martin Luther's interpretation of Paul's letters emphasizes what it means to serve others. For thus no member of the body serves itself, nor does it seek its own welfare over that of the other. Conducting ourselves with our neighbors is a way to consider vocation's relationship to the common good. This brings me to my first love, literature, and especially a poem that regularly speaks to me as a significant vocational imagining. The poem is by poet Marge Percy and is entitled, To Be of Use. Let me read it for you here. To Be of Use by Marge Percy. The people I love the best jump into work head first without dallying in the shallows and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element, the black, sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust, but the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn, are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. Those last images of the pitcher crying out for water and a person crying out for work that is real are so significant. We are vessels yearning to be filled with purpose discerning the work that we are made for. Here are the lines that always get me. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. There is also the language of love, in particular, the people we love to work with, those who submerge in the task together. The call to love, the responsibility we have to each other and to those we might never meet, is what vocation for the common good looks like. Going on vocation is to be of use, but to be open to be of use in ways that are unexpected and even challenging. As we get our hands dirty in the work of the world, it reminds me really of what forms the best travel experience, experiencing the local. The local brings us nearer to the web of relationships that make a place, the cultural, spiritual, historical narratives, and the people who contribute to the place. This is particularly helpful when we think about vocation, allowing dreams and possibilities to touch down in our backyards, classrooms, and campuses, prompting us to see that a connection to the here and now is part of our call to collective life. The local is integral to our callings. We live here, in this place, Berrien Springs, Michigan, and ought to ask, what am I being summoned to here? What can this place teach me about living a life of purpose and meaning? Or consider theologian Friedrich Buechner's framing of calling as the kind of work that you most need to do and that the world most needs to have done. One excellent way to experience the local and get our hands dirty is to garden. I grew up gardening. That wasn't too much fun as a kid, but now I have come to appreciate that it takes all that it takes to grow beautiful produce, and even better, to appreciate the taste of produce in the heart of summer. I also understand how easy it is to be terrible at it. Within our local ecologies, we can see that living vocations within the common good is living into both a radical and everyday practice. It is also a practice that invites the reflective pause and patient waiting. So as we live vocationally, responding to our callings with love, responding to the summons of our neighbors and strangers near and far, we ought to study the maps of others and then draw our own. We ought to pinpoint the crossroads and directions that we have taken and hope to take. We should get our hands dirty in the work of the world, learning to live in relationship with others. We need to pay attention to our local environments, our backyards, and our global communities. The places of call invite us to relate to one another as interdependent members of a single body, cultivating and tending a common home. It is not a singular solo journey when we go on vacation. It is a train or bus full of others. We ought to enjoy that ride together. So I have a final piece of advice for traveling, which comes from a book I teach regularly in my spiritual memoir class, in which students reflect upon their own vocational journeys by studying the pathways of others. Anne Lamott's book, Traveling Mercies, Some Thoughts on Faith, offers up the ways that her experience of forgiveness and love can help expand our sense of purpose in the world. In it, she recalls the message that the elderly women in her church congregation share when you're about to leave that place for travel. They say, traveling mercies. Love the journey. God is with you. Come home safe and sound. I think this is a fitting message when we are going on vocation. God, we can say to each other, I hope that you know you are not alone. God and others are with you as you discern your purpose. Love the journey and the exploration of the sum in life. It may not be easy or go as planned, but learn to experience the depth of it all. Come home safe, even if you are broken, because there will be others to respond with love. And so I say to all of you, through Lamott's words, as you consider your vocational journeys, traveling mercies, love the journey. God is with you. Come home safe and sound.